let's talk about white supremacy with a tan, which is a long article that CNN put out that at once celebrates the increasing browning of America. America's becoming a less white country, as they put it. But of course, this isn't going to destroy white supremacy as they describe it. Now, we'll get into what these terms mean as we go on, but they are lamenting. So they say...
I just want to say first about that thumbnail that they have for their article. Literal NPC meme.
Literal NPCs. But also, you can't help but notice that the white one is not only leading, but is also larger, more superior. From CNN's thumbnail. I wouldn't have made that thumbnail. But as you say, literal NPCs. So they begin with the myth that when white people are no longer a majority, racism will fade and the US will never be a capital W white country again. Now, capitalizing the word white has significant political implications, which is why I think it was the Associated Press or various press standards of organizations said that they're going to capitalize B for political black, as in the black nation within a nation. Again, this is all stuff that I'll explain in the critical race theory breakdown that I'll end up doing in about a month or so. But that's... that what they mean is that black people are a nation within a nation, so a sovereign group of people within the United States called blacks. And for some reason, they've capitalized the W in white. So they're saying that white people are a sovereign nation, a sovereign race within the United States. Awful, awful framing, right? The only thing that should be capitalized if this is being discussed is the A in American. Right, you're Americans. You're not blacks or whites or anything like this. These are all ridiculous categories that foreigners don't recognize when looking at your country.
We can't even tell the difference between you.
Not really. No, you're all the same. You're all the same. You're all Americans.
Yankees.
Right? Just be aware of that. To us, you're Americans. So anyway, they say that this myth was reinforced recently when the US Census 2020 report revealed that people who identified as white, capital, again, alone, declined for the first time. It's totally irresponsible to have the capital W white. And honestly, right, if go on like various sort of alternative social media sites and look up those people who expressly pronounce themselves to be white supremacists or Nazis, and they were celebrating when they were using capital W white, this is CNN using that. So this is the Daily Stormer's view on what white people are that's being projected from CNN. It's disgraceful, right?
No surprise either.
Well, I did find it surprising. I didn't think they'd be so bold about this. So we're well into race war territory from CNN here. Anyway, so the majority who identify as white alone declined for the first time since the census began in 1790. So the majority of Americans under 18 are now people of color, and people who identify as multiracial increased by 276% over the last decade. These census figures seem to validate a common assumption. The US is barreling towards becoming a rainbow nation around 2045 when white people are projected to become a minority.
What do you mean rainbow nation where one of the colours isn't there? Well, that's how they're defining the rainbow nation.
Yeah. Anyway, that year has been depicted as the countdown to the white apocalypse. By who? Like, who is doing that? Who's called it that, right? It's also been called...
Joe Biden supporter Richard Spencer.
Yeah, well, yeah, and possibly, yeah. And dreadful news for white supremacists. Again, what constitutes a white supremacist is not what you think a white supremacist is. And two commentators have apparently even predicted the US white majority will soon disappear forever. It's taken as a given now that the browning of America will lead to an erosion of white supremacy. Right, this is just awful. But they're not talking about they're not talking about people who are wearing clan hoods. They're talking about the average American. That's what they're talking about. This author says, I used to believe those predictions. Now I have a different conclusion. Don't ever underestimate white supremacy's ability to adapt.
So there are going to be no white people. There are just going to be people with brown skin. And white supremacy is going to live through them?
Yes. That's exactly what they think. Which is very revealing. Because when they say white supremacy, they're not actually suggesting it's tied to a race.
No.
So if brown people can be white supremacists, perhaps the term white supremacy is a misnomer. Perhaps it's poorly labelled through the lens of left-wing American race politics, which seems to be the case, doesn't it? So they say, yeah, the assumption that more racial diversity equals racial equality is a dangerous myth. Racial diversity can function as a cloaking device, concealing the most powerful forms of white supremacy while giving the appearance of racial progress. Ooh. Spooky white supremacy in the
Like
minds of brown people.
Like multiple African countries, white supremacist.
Yes.
Oh.
Racism will likely be just as entrenched in a browner America as it is now. So literally, we brought in a bunch of brown people because we hated those white people, and to get rid of the white people, we got rid of them, and now we're all still a bunch of white supremacists. Well, then maybe this wasn't the problem. So anyway, by saying white supremacy, what they're talking about is a kind of English-speaking Anglo-Saxon Protestant values.
Yeah.
If we go to
Being white.
if we go to the Smithsonian's chart, this was the most revealing way of presenting this. And as you can see, if you can go to the top, right, they aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture. So when they say white, they mean English, and when they say white, they are for some reason appealing to a race when what they mean is a set of values. And these are actually English Enlightenment values.
Because the majority of white settlers to America were English.
Yeah, basically. And so...
But the leftists are too stupid to realise that that's the difference.
Yes, and the term itself, the fact that they use a racial term, conceals the fact that you're talking about a system of values. And of course, any system of values can be held by anyone. Like, any human can hold a system of values. And you can see exactly the kind of culture that they're talking about. Individualism, which is self-reliance, independence and autonomy, the nuclear family, the scientific method over superstition, Protestant work ethic, heavy value on property rights, planning for the future, sensible time management, competitive spirit, personal responsibility, and common law justice. None of these are racially exclusive.
They're also English.
They're also English.
The bottom there, communication, the King's English.
Yes. So, I mean, you know, it couldn't be more clear.
Probably talking about France, I don't know.
Yeah, could well be a bit of German in there, who knows. But the point is that these are a system of values that constructed a certain set of institutions which provide the country we call the United States with the character and prosperity that it has now. And what they're saying is that these values are the reasons that immigrants want to immigrate to America. That's what made America great, is the fact that they protect private property, they have the common law, and they have a democratic republican system, right? These are what makes America desirable to other countries. Countries that don't have these values and institutions run along these lines don't have the same kind of success the United States has. And it's not a coincidence that the English-speaking world, which is built on these assumptions, is generally where most immigrants seem to want to go. It's not a surprise, it's not a coincidence, and there's nothing stopping other countries from adopting these values. And if the people who are coming from these countries are looking and going, yeah, I want those values, you can't tie this to race. It's tied to culture. These values are, of course, English Enlightenment values, but anyway, returning to the article, they say, I don't like raising such a pessimistic scenario, in part for personal reasons. I want to believe my country is on the verge of this brown new world. Again, Brave New World, you can go to lotuseast.com and check out our book club on Brave New World. It's not a utopia.
It's a dystopia.
Yeah, it's not something to try and strive for. It's the opposite.
Well,
it's something to be avoided.
For any reasonable person, it's not something to strive for. But if you are a leftist...
If you're a CNN contributor, like perhaps Richard Spencer and this person...
Maybe you want Brave New World and children interacting with each other sexually as their children.
Yes, and people being totally atomized from one another and...
Everyone on drugs.
Everyone on drugs.
Kind of like California.
And having nothing to ever strive for and
California.
being set in stratified social castes.
California.
That they can't escape and are in fact made to fulfill. California. So yes, Brave New World, not something to aim for, but where there will be such a rich gumbo of skin hues, hair textures, and racially ambiguous people that racism will lose its sting. But the thing is, that's not what racism is to you. Racism isn't what people do to one another. They consider racism to be the very structure of the system itself. As we saw in the chart, what they're saying is we need to overthrow these values and replace them with other values. And so she explains, I think it's a she actually, I'm not sure if it's she, but they explain that their family is a symbol of these demographic changes and explain to us that my mother is Irish, my father was black, my wife is an immigrant from Central America with a biracial mother and a white Ladino father who is Jewish and Castilian, my stepmother is Chilean, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, great. That's no one cares.
No one does this but Americans as
No.
It's such an American thing to be like, yeah, I'm going to go back for like 5 generations and compare all the racial mix-up of all of them.
Yeah, no one cares about any of that. But the point is, why would someone of such mixed ancestry be so obsessed with race? Why wouldn't they not want to talk about race? Why would they want to talk about something else? culture, personal values, achievements. Who knows? But for some reason, obsessed with race. Right?
Lukewarm IQ, that's why.
Well, yeah. So they say, right, there is a yearning embedded in my DNA that a demographic tide will overtake white supremacy.
Sorry, is she going to F her way to the end of white supremacy?
But a yearning embedded in your DNA? You sound like a Nazi. Like, you literally sound like the German Untermensch and the yearning in their DNA to be superior over all of the other races. Like, it's literally...
I mean, you could reword that and be like, yeah, we're going to overtake Jewish supremacy, or,
Yeah.
international Jewry, or whatever Hitler would use as a term.
I'm sure he would have said something like a yearning in my blood, right, which is basically what she's saying here. Anyway, the belief that white people are superior and they should maintain political, social, and economic power over other races. That's not what you mean when you say white supremacy. You mean the systems of government and institutions that you have in the United States that came from England. That's what you mean. And the cultural norms that support those institutions. No one thinks that white people are superior and should maintain political and social and economic power over other races. And if they did, why would they allow other races into their own countries? Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense.
But again, with the Hitler-ness there, I must destroy English individualism.
Yeah.
I have a yearning in my blood to do it.
Yeah, I know.
Because it's Jewish controlled.
And CNN they just publish this as if this is nothing. This is totally normal for them, right? She says, I'm sure it's a she. I'm going to have to try and remember just say
who
they.
cares?
This yearning is not driven by some wish that people of colour will someday rule over whites.
F. X.
Yeah.
Doubt.
I do have big doubts on that. It's a hope for a more just America. A hope that we can somehow escape the tribalism that tore other countries apart. Oh yeah, that's likely. That's what's happening, isn't it? The tribalism, the breaking people down into their multicultural silos, their enclaves, where no culture is allowed to talk to another. One of the essays in Critical Race Theory, the key writings that form the movement, is about literally race-conscious district. Sorry, it's John Blake. Right. Okay. Thank you. So one of the essays is about race-conscious districting, as in at the moment, right? Districts are drawn based on geographic location. Well, you know what that means, Callum? That means race mixing. We can't have any of that nasty race mixing because people might get on with each other and not hate each other. And so what we need is race-conscious districts. So the blacks are there, the browns are there, the whites are there, and never the twain shall meet. Literally.
South Africa likes this post.
Exactly. It's literally apartheid, right?
But I also love that the politics of the new South Africa of high identity politics. Yeah, that's an example of what tore a country apart. And you're like, yeah, but what if you try it in America?
Exactly.
Was it real identity politics?
Like, this person, don't get me wrong, I don't think this person is smart enough or well-read enough to know that by adopting all of this framing and promoting all of this stuff, by succumbing to the yearning in their DNA, they are actually promoting tribalism and are going to cause the breakup of the United States.
Just whenever you mentioned the yearning in my DNA, I have like German marching music
Yeah,
playing in my ears now.
I can't hear anything other than Nazism coming through this.
Und das Reich.
I just can't stand it. But the point is, your individual rights are there to protect you from racial domination. Like, that's what they do. That's literally what they do. And so, anyway, they cite David Simon, the creator of HBO series The Wire, for some reason. America will soon belong to men and women, black, white, Latino, and Asian, Christian, and Jew, and Muslim, and atheist, and gay, and straight, who can walk into a room and accept with real comfort the sensation that they are in a world of certain difference, that there are no real majorities, only pluralities and coalitions. How is that comforting? Like an uncertain, shifting sea of racial coalitions. And again, this is one of the things they talk about often in critical race theory.
Isn't this how most people end up describing, like, what is it, the quarters of Jerusalem that are divided up between the different religious groups?
I was going to say that about the Middle East generally, and through various tribal factions and loyalties. If that's a model that you're trying to reproduce, okay, well, doesn't look good to me. I think that we should be interested in party politics, where you can self-associate to the party of your choice and not have that determined by your blood, because I'm not a fucking Nazi.
I love the chat. It's like she's describing the gay race.
Well, yes.
Like one of those are racial groups.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Anyway, Simon added that this may be the last presidential election in which anyone but a fool tries to play on a national level, at least. The cards of racial exclusion. What? Racial exclusion? It turns out that reports of white supremacy's demise were exaggerated, however. White supremacy isn't just more resilient than many assume, it's also elastic. God, that's amazing. I can't believe it. I mean, where is it? Is it in the room with us now? I mean, I have no idea. Where's the manifesto? You know, how do we...
Again, international Jewry comes to mind.
It does, doesn't
It's
it?
like, you talk to a Nazi, where is it? Well, you know, it's everywhere.
Yeah, well, you know, you can't point to it, but it's there.
Even non-Jews, they're
Yeah.
Jews.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
They're all tools of international Jewry.
I think Hitler did actually end up writing about that, where he ended up calling like the English a bunch of Jews.
Oh yeah, we were. Oh yeah, absolutely. Because we were agents of international finance, which meant Jews.
There we go.
Anyway, so white supremacy isn't just more resilient than many assume; it's also elastic. Consider how whiteness has been defined. Again, capital W. It's a prime example of how white supremacy adapts. The census suggests that white Americans will be a minority, but as several commentators have already noted, that date can easily be postponed. Whiteness isn't a fixed identity; it's like taffy. It expands to accommodate new members, if they have the right look. Does it? I'm glad that these people can tell me, because I wouldn't have known. And so they say, like in books like How the Irish Became White and How the Jews Became White, we get to find out. And so,
Do we?
Well, apparently,
Are they white?
But well,
Because
what does white mean?
But that's the thing. Like, even in these weird racial, kind of groups of people who talk about this, there's still this huge debate about whether or not Jews are white.
Yes.
So,
but the thing is, right? If whiteness is so elastic, why doesn't just everyone become white? It's not tied to biological race. We've already exploded that thought. So why not just say you can all be white?
Also, why do white people keep trying to be black?
Yeah. But well, yeah, yeah. But if it's so elastic, just everyone can just say, "Well, I'm white then," and who's going to tell you not? If you're upholding white supremacy and whiteness, Larry Elder can be white. Then what? White supremacist or whatever. Why doesn't everyone just go, "Okay, we're all white. Problem solved"?
That would be white supremacy.
Would it?
But that's the thing. No, it doesn't make any sense, because like, if everyone's white, then there's still white supremacy. If no one's white, there's still white supremacy.
Yeah,
I mean, you're dealing
it's
with
where we are.
You're dealing with a Nazi who's like, yeah, the Jews are everywhere. What if there are no Jews? Jews did it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we'll still be under the Jewish heel.
So there was a joke I heard, which is the reason Nazi Germany failed, according to the Nazis, is because there were too many Jews. It's like,
Oh my God.
rightio.
Right. Okay. Moving
It
on.
wasn't real fascism.
The US has broadened its definition of white people throughout history just enough to maintain power over black, Asian, and Latino people. Yeah, but aren't Latinos becoming white as well? And weren't the Asians declared to be white?
I think they're honorary Aryans or something.
Well, however
No, but you see on the
CNN
history
describes it.
rhymes
Yeah,
again and again. It's
Again,
like-
but I'm pretty sure that basically all of these groups have been subsumed. I saw
Yeah.
a thing as well. There
Harvard
was
University calls them white.
there was a yes, they do, and there was a legal case that showed that Arabs are white as well.
Yep.
So if you're an Arab and you go to America, you're officially white. It's ridiculous.
You remember, I think it's Trevor Noah actually did a good set on this back in the day, where he's like, his dad's white, his mum's black or something.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, I was never called black in South Africa, but when I come to America, I'm suddenly black. Yeah, the same thing. Like an Arab,
Yeah.
you're not white, but then when you come to America, you're a white. All right.
Basically Norwegian. Anyway, so through a historical lens, being white in America today is like belonging to a once exclusive social club that has had to loosen its membership criteria to stay afloat. Well, then why not just continue loosening that criteria? Like, yeah, literally be inclusive. If whiteness is so inclusive, what's the problem with it? Anyway, so why do so many racial groups gravitate towards whiteness? The answer is both pragmatic and psychological. It's due to a racial hierarchy, believe it or not, that places whiter-looking people at the top and darker-skinned people at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder, which doesn't explain the Asians and how they're the highest earners in America. So, I mean, personally, my explanation for it is returning to those Protestant values that built America. You can see how the hard-working Asians with protected property work very hard and be very successful.
Sure, but there's also the family values and all the rest of it.
Yeah, there are. Yeah,
that we've
all of
lost
these
in the
things. Yeah, that's in the chart as well. Nuclear family and all of
Yeah,
this.
it's just that we've largely lost this compared to...
Yeah, but the point is, white people are actually slipping down the racial rankings, and they're like, yeah, that's white supremacy.
I think we're at the bottom in the UK. So.
We are at the bottom of the UK, just above the gypsies, in fact. And so this racial hierarchy is the foundation of white supremacy. Europeans created it, just random Europeans, they're all the same basically, created it around 500 years ago to justify slavery and colonialism. This hierarchy is where we get the modern conception of race. How is there Irish presidents in America if we're going to have a racial hierarchy? There have been Irish presidents, racial hierarchy.
And a half black one.
And a half black one. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I can't remember.
It was half.
Right, he was fully black when he became president anyway.
Yeah.
So.
But this hierarchy is where we get the modern conception of race, how a person's inherent worth, intelligence, or attractiveness can be determined by the pigmentation of their skin. No one thinks that. Find me the person who thinks that. Find me a person who thinks that a person's attractiveness can be determined by the pigmentation of their skin.
Richard Spencer.
I doubt he would even be so ridiculous.
With his
Like,
Asian GF.
If you got,
I don't know what his GF
well,
is.
I don't know. But
It's
like,
just a joke.
if you got this horrifically ugly white person and then this unbelievably beautiful, like black or non-white woman, he's not going to be like, well, yeah, she's ugly because she's got melanated skin.
At least my girlfriend is white.
But even then, like, no one says attractiveness is determined by pigmentation. It's so dumb. But anyway, either way, well, why continue it then? Why not just abolish the concept of race as an organizing principle? If you're complaining about it,
Well, then
why?
there's no left, so...
Oh, exactly, right. There's no left-wing politics then. We just abolished it. So the future of whiteness apparently is going to rest with the Latinos, so I'm going to try and hurry up. But it's a truth that's hard for me to accept because I see that racial hierarchy at work within my own family. Young male relatives who appear to the world as black and one appears to the world as white, and apparently they have they live in different universes. And one of them got suspended, accusing him of bullying her, and he surprised himself by telling his wife, "Thank God he looks white." Yeah, I think we found the white supremacist here. If the accusation had been made against the darker relative, the outcome may have been different. May have been better, but we don't know. Anyway, so getting on, because I'm going to skip a bunch. Multiracial people will not save America. So even being multiracial is not going to help. Some pin their hopes on for a more racially tolerant future on multiracial people. That issue hits even close home to me. We're often described as the vanguard of a new racial order. CNN using the words vanguard of a new racial order in 2021, in which interracial couples and their children will chip away at white supremacy until it collapses. I hate this fucking ideology. The explosive growth of Americans who now identify as multiracial could be used to reinforce racial inequality. How? Depends on how we check the box. Ah, yes, that's how this works. That's how it works. On the census, did you check black or white or mixed? And if you check the wrong box, then you're a white supremacist. Racial classification numbers are a great tool for uncovering the hidden hand of white supremacy, systemic racism. These numbers are used to enforce civil rights laws, track discrimination, and protect voting rights, apparently. So, finally, what would real racial progress look like? Well, here's the hard truth we have to face about the future. We may someday live in an America where there are no racial majorities, but whiteness can still reign supreme. Nothing will change, though, unless we go after the racial hierarchy that makes whiteness such an exclusive club. But you've already told us it's not an exclusive club because it keeps expanding to absorb other racial groups. This requires radical change, as you can imagine. We need communism, Callum. It would involve uprooting systemic racism embedded in our public schools, neighbourhoods and justice system. So abolish all of that. All of those good and productive institutions that have high standards, abolish those. It would involve a more equitable sharing of power and resources. Communism.
Yep, racial communism.
Racial communism, not out of white guilt or compulsion, but out of knowledge that we all do better when we all do better. It will ultimately require that we discard the modern notion of race. Then why are you bringing it up? Just get rid of it.
People are never going to do it.
No. How can...
It's like the diversity and inclusion officer. You know, racism will end when she declares it ends. It's not going to happen.
It's literally Marx saying, look, what we need is a dictatorship of the proletariat to abolish the state. It's like, that's not going to happen. That's not how that works. You can't do something more and more and more and then expect to have none of it at the end. I hate it. It's so stupid. Anyway, if we don't dismantle the racial hierarchy which gives status and power to whiteness, this new version of America won't really be new. It'll be just another updated version of white supremacy with a tan. Unbelievable.
Did you skip over the bit where he said about you deny your mother?
Well, I had to skip some.
I've got to mention it because it's just too good. In which he talks about there's been a long debate in multiracial community about how to express ourselves in the boxes, about where do you tick. And he said to his father that he describes himself as black, not mixed. And his father responded at the dinner table, "When you say you're black, you deny your mother."
Ooh.
And then he was like, "Yeah, but if I click these boxes, I might help white supremacy." I was like, His
black father.
If we accurately represent ourselves in the census, we're upholding white supremacy as well.
Yeah, but his black father's saying, don't deny your mother.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but white supremacy, and the black father must have been like, idiot.
What the hell's wrong with my kid?
Yeah.
What did you do to him? If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to prelotuseaters.com and get access to all our premium content.
Things like our book club, where we examine classics like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World and examine the themes that underpin it, and now we're getting worryingly close to that, or modern books like Mark Sidwell's The Long March, which is how exactly we ended up in the current cultural situation we're in and what conservatives can do about it. Or you can check out the other series we have, such as our Contemplation series, where Hugo and Josh decided to, in the latest one, have a look at an examination on the ways that other elections have been rigged for no reason at all. Or you can check out our Epoch series, which is one of my personal favorites because this is where I get to talk about history. And I love talking about just random things from history. And one of the great things we can do with this series is talk about those things that aren't so often discussed. So, I mean, you can talk about Xerxes' army, the vast army that invaded Greece during the Greco-Persian Wars. Or we can go through things like Herodotus' view on the Scythians. Who are they? You probably don't know, but they used to be quite an important people a long time ago, and they're very, very interesting. We've got some really good reports about them. Or we've got premium podcasts, which is things we generally don't want to put outside of the paywall because we might get in trouble from, such as the list of things that Alex Jones was right about. Or we do just very interesting discussions because there are things that we do lots of work on. Another one is that I'm particularly proud of is where Christopher Hitchens, the famous new atheist, would have fallen during the modern culture wars, because he probably wouldn't have been very woke. But we also have lots of interviews and articles and other things on the website that you can sign up to enjoy, and we're really proud of them.
So if any of that sounds good to you, go over to lotuseaters.com and sign up for as little as £5 a month to support us keep the show going, and also to get access to all the content. Thank you and goodbye.